It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. President Trump praises Xi and Cignetti. Commies are all for judicial supremacy till they're not anymore. And Spencer Pratt sounds familiar. Next on the AM Update. Could we see some bombs being dropped in the Middle East coming up very soon? President Trump left that door wide open at the White House yesterday in the aftermath of the latest round of failed negotiations with the IRGC.
For the time being, the ceasefire remains in place?
It's unbelievably weak, I would say. I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand these are all medical people. Dr. Oz, life support is not a good thing.
So there's President Trump saying the ceasefire with Iran on life support. If I had a gun pointed to my head, will the United States start dropping bombs within the next week and a half? I would say yes, at this point, reserving my right to change my mind at any possible time. President Trump also calling Iranian leadership very dishonorable people and saying that he has the best plan ever, reiterating Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Of course, all of this comes before Trump's meeting in China with Xi Jinping. President Trump also at that confab at the White House said this about China's leader.
And he's a great gentleman. I find him to be an amazing man. And when I say that, the press always says, oh, that's terrible that he called him. He runs 1.4 billion people with a pretty iron fist. He loves his country, I can tell you that. President Xi, I look forward to being there. And if he felt anything, we wouldn't be doing it. But a lot of good things can happen. No.
President Trump saying, quote, I find him to be an amazing man. And when I say that, the press always says, oh, that's terrible. He called him that. He runs 1.4 billion people with a pretty iron fist. He loves his country. I can tell you that. Trump's quote regarding Xi Jinping in passing there. Again, we're 10 years into Trump's, being a major political figure. If you're shocked by any of those comments, especially now, 2 terms in the White House, I don't know what to tell you. That's what he says about basically every world leader especially ahead of meetings. Of course, ahead of that meeting, we got this from the Department of Justice yesterday. The mayor of Arcadia has been charged in federal court with acting as an illegal agent of the People's Republic of China. Eileen Wang, 58 years old, of Arcadia, California, charged via information with 1 count of acting in the United States as an illegal agent of a foreign government. In a related filing, Wang has agreed to plead guilty to a felony count, which carries a mandatory maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison. Arcadia, California, their mayor charged as a spy for the People's Republic of China. I almost said California there, Freudian slip. We're going to be talking about California politics a little bit later. City of about 54,000 people, acting as a spy at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. Also had this story yesterday as well involving China. This is from Raw Story, citing a new report. Now, these reports with the White House, you have to read these one of 2 ways. If it's not on the record, if it's an anonymous source, it's somebody trying to damage the White House, or it could be the White House actually floating a trial balloon. So you got to read it one of 2 ways. Here it is. Always one looking to make a splashy deal, President Trump is giving serious consideration to allowing China to make a massive investment in the U.S. against the advice of some in his closest advisors. In a column for the New York Times, conservative economist Orrin Cass reported the president may be on the verge of tying the United States to China irrevocably. Mr. Trump and Xi Jinping are reportedly considering a deal to allow China to invest $1 trillion into the United States, largely to build factories on American soil. Again, this story coming out, citing sources within the White House, saying we might be on the verge of letting China own even more property in the United States. Again, one of 2 ways to read this. Some malicious actor within the administration trying to damage the administration, or the administration or somebody friendly to the administration trying to put this out there as a trial balloon to say, hey, this cannot happen. This absolutely cannot happen. It's one of those two things. On the issue of the hantavirus, RFK Jr., HHS chief, has this to say as 17 or 18, I think I saw yesterday, Americans were brought home to be in quarantine. They were passengers on that cruise ship off the coast of, I believe, South America.
It is supervised and given plans for going home. We have this under control, and we're not worried about it.
RFK Jr. saying, hantavirus, got it under control, not worried about it. Meanwhile, what year is it? Debbie Birx, the former White House coronavirus task force coordinator, with her scarf and all, went on News Nation over the weekend to drop a few terms I thought that we were done with, and I hoped we would be done with for the rest of our lives.
So the Andes strain is the only strain where we have mapped human-to-human transmission. And I caution people because when we say human-to-human transmission, we're talking about people who develop symptoms. But because we're not testing populations with RNAs, we don't really know whether there are subclinical cases. So there could be more human-to-human transmission than we actually see. It's never good to track viruses through symptoms. We should be tracking viruses through blood tests like PCR. We've learned.
Somebody trying to call me with a freaking survey right as that was getting going. You heard the term that she dropped there, saying, we need more PCR testing. More PCR. Dude, the last time I heard PCR testing was, I think, late 2020. Late 2020. Man, I thought I'd woken up and traveled back 6 years. That was Debbie Birx's whole thing. Just test. Doesn't matter what kind of test. It actually does. It has to be the one that's going to pick up minute traces of basically every disease, every virus known to mankind. Do that test. That's the only kind of test that we should do, because there might be more transmission. Man alive. I watched that clip. I could not believe it was present day, but it is. Let's go to this. Following the Virginia Supreme Court's striking down of the Democrats' gerrymandered map that would eliminate nearly all Republican representation of Virginia, U.S. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries is having conversation with state Democrats about next steps. Hakeem Jeffries spoke on MS Now about something that he's mulling.
Period of time, we do have these structural problems that need to be addressed. We've got to, for instance, make sure we pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act so we can end the era of voter suppression in the United States of America once and for all. We have to end Citizens United, dramatically reform our campaign finance laws to stop the ability of these deep-pocketed special interests to intervene. And we are going to have to explore massive judicial reform, state by state and at the federal level, and everything should be on the table as far as I'm concerned. In period of time, we do have these structural...
Everything is on the table. He also said, I want to repeat this as well, we're going to have to explore judicial reform, state by state, and at the federal level. Everything should be on the table. So we are all good with judicial supremacy when it comes to, like, Bostock. When it comes to what was the homosexual marriage, which is a misnomer, doesn't exist. That ruling as well. Obergefell. Totally fine with judicial supremacy on that. Totally fine when a circuit court overrules the will of the California people back in 2008, I think it was, or maybe early 2006. When California, of all places, passed a referendum banning so-called same-sex marriage. Totally fine with judicial supremacy then. Now that Republicans, right-wingers, have actually worked through the system and actually gotten some good appointments, some decent appointments, maybe some of you more cynical than me would say decent appointments at best. Now that we've actually worked the legal system, now we're going to have to do judicial reform. One of the ideas that I've seen thrown around is lowering the mandatory retirement age for those on the Virginia Supreme Court to like 54, firing, I think, all 7 members of the Virginia Supreme Court because they didn't like this one ruling. That is how committed they are to attaining and wielding power. For power's sake, That's the name of the game when it comes to the communists. President Trump back at the Oval Office.
But you can say that we're going to reduce drug prices by 80%, and we won't get one Democrat vote. I don't know how they get away with it. That's why we call them the Democrats. We have a new name. They're Democrats because they're dumb.
I know the dude is pushing 80. Or he is 80 now, I think. Come on, man. Stuff like that is when people seriously start to think you're losing your fastball. The Democrats. Okay. We expect better trolling from President Trump than that. When we come back, not only did Trump praise Xi, he praised Coach Cignetti. Also, a word on Spencer Pratt. He sounds familiar. It's coming up next. The White House honored the 2025-2026 Hoosiers football team, national champions, undefeated.
Recorded 2 of Indiana's first 5 sacks. Think of that. So he had 5 sacks. Well, helping the team secure a hard-fought 13-10 victory, really against a great football power. All right, that's a big honor. Next up was the Rose Bowl, where Indiana delivered a commanding 38-3 victory over Alabama. Coach, roll time. You got to be.
Coach Cignetti taunting Alabama there. Roll Tide, as President Trump read through some of the Hoosiers football team's accomplishments as the entire team was honored at the White House. Let's get to some housekeeping really quick. There are a few dozen of you who have been subscribed on Apple Podcasts to a premium subscription that I offered there, $5 a month. For an ad-free, up until recently, listening experience. After trying to troubleshoot this with both my podcast host and with Apple, I've gotten nowhere. It works for me. You just have to look for the edition of the podcast with the subscriber edition badge on it. It always worked for me. I'm not really sure, and I really can't troubleshoot for dozens of people one by one, this subscription. Plus, there is an extraordinary step by one of the subscribers of emailing my boss at my day job about this yesterday, frustrated that they were still getting ads. That's inappropriate, and it's just a headache that I can't deal with anymore. So that's meaningful income to me that I'm going to have to say goodbye to, because that's just out of bounds, and I'm not gonna deal with that any longer. So canceling as of this moment. Put the notice on X yesterday. As of this moment, no more premium subscriber content for those subscribed over at Apple Podcasts. That is coming to an end. Too much of a headache. That's bye-bye. So those of you who are subscribed, from what I've read, you should be getting refunds as well. Refunding whatever is left on, I think, the latest billing cycle, whatever that is for you. If not, and you really have a problem with the $5 that you lost, you can contact me and you can provide definitive proof that you were a subscriber. But please be patient. Don't contact me because you haven't gotten a refund of your $3, probably. So there's that. Also, not that I'm bitter at all. This entire ordeal has been incredibly frustrating on the audio side. But we are now on video, on YouTube. Could I sound any more of a douchebag than what I just did? It's been a really frustrating process. That's why I've got the scars, both mentally, emotionally, and through the timbre of my voice. We are live on YouTube. At Real AM Update is the new handle there. At Real AM Update on YouTube. YouTube.com/@RealAMUpdate. Let us continue on with the news that actually matters. International news. Played a little clip for you yesterday of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel talking about what remains his red line when it comes to this war against Iran. He also discussed the future of American relationships and says it's time to wean.
Do you believe it's time for the state of Israel to re-examine and possibly reset its financial relationship to the United States, meaning what the United States provides to Israel on an annual basis?
Absolutely. And I've said this to President Trump. I've said it to our own people. Their jaws dropped. But I said, look.
Well, what do you mean? What are you saying?
I want to draw down to zero the American financial support, the financial component of the military cooperation that we have, because we receive $3.8 billion a year. And I think that it's time that we weaned ourselves from the remaining military support.
Can you give me a timetable?
I said, let's start now and do it over the next decade.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying he wants to end the billions of dollars in military aid that his country receives from the United States. Every time I speak even moderately supportive of Israel, there's like 2 or 3 people, and what I'm about to say is addressed to you 2 or 3 people. There's 2 or 3 people that end up in my mentions one way or another. It sounds like a Zionist. You're not a Zionist, are you, Aaron? As if that's some sort of dirty word. Because there have been nefarious actors, I believe, who have deliberately and maliciously redefined that word into meaning some sort of Israeli first nationalism, which is not what it means at all. It means that you are somebody who believes that Israel, the modern state of Israel, has a moral and historical claim, not a right, but a moral and historical claim to that spit of land that they currently occupy and have been able to defend on the eastern part of the Mediterranean. That's what a Zionist is. So this is directed to all 2 or 3 of those people. You're probably the brigade that also says, hey, Israel's the tail that's wagging the dog, and the dog is the United States and or Donald Trump, although you never have the stones to actually say it's Donald Trump that you believe is being manipulated. But the tail's wagging the dog. Well, I've got news for you. The tail is now trying to decouple from the dog. What are you going to do now? What's your talking point now? Just asking questions. Let's go to this. Let's end it here. Spencer Pratt sounds familiar. First, I want to play this for you. I think there are some times when politicians, whether it's at the local level, sometimes at the state legislative level, statewide office holder, they'll come up with these viral moments. It'll go really well. They'll get a bunch of free publicity, a bunch of free impressions, and then they go on to maybe pull in 30% in a primary, 20% in a primary, never to be heard from again, other than maybe grifting on social media. How can you tell when a social media phenomenon is actually forcing people to pay attention in a serious way? I told you one way yesterday that's a possibility. Karen Bass, after the last debate, deciding she's not going to participate in any more Los Angeles mayoral debates. That could be a signal. Another signal could be this. This is meant as an attack ad against Republican Spencer Pratt, another LA mayoral candidate we've been talking about recently.
Republican Spencer Pratt is the last thing Los Angeles needs for mayor. Pratt opposes using taxpayer money to build brand new houses for our unhoused neighbors, saying it's time for the homeless to get help or get out. Pratt thinks LA needs thousands more police officers rather than more social workers, and Republican Spencer Pratt thinks public employee unions should have less power, not more. LA is on the right track and needs to stay the course. Vote no on Republican Spencer Pratt.
So that's meant to be an attack ad against Spencer Pratt. It's meant to be an attack ad. But everything in there sounds fairly, I guess unless you're a teacher or involved with the teachers' unions, everything else in there sounds fairly common sense, especially if you're living with the homeless epidemic every single day. But it shows you the fact that they feel like they have to say these things and create attack ads, show you the machine in LA is actually taking Spencer Pratt pretty seriously. We've heard sound bites. What does he sound like in a longer form conversation? Heard a little bit from that CBS story. Here is All In, the All In podcast, talking to Spencer Pratt. And I want to tell you, every time I hear him in a format like this, he sounds awfully familiar.
What people forget is they can't lower the cost of goods. The only thing you can do to make things more affordable as mayor, which I will be able to do, is put more money in people's pockets. We need to put more revenue in the city. We're over here, they're always asking me, how are you going to balance this budget, Spencer? There's going to be no money to do this. We should be the number one city in the world. We should have money shooting out of ATMs. We're Los Angeles. There will be plenty of money when we let the systems work, when we let business work. How can you let business work if you have drug addicts going number 2 and number 1 in front of every cafe? We lost over 100 restaurants in LA, not because they weren't good food, because you have drug addicts scaring people to go out. What people forget is they can't lower the...
So there's Spencer Pratt. 39-second clip there. He sounds familiar. I want to read this for you, not in his voice, but in my relatively flat, direct voice. What people forget is they can't lower the cost of goods. The only thing you can do to make things more affordable as mayor, which I will be able to do, is put more money in people's pockets. We need to put more revenue in the city. We're over here. They're always asking me, how are you going to balance the budget, Spencer? There's going to be no money to do this. We should be the number 1 city in the world. We should have money shooting out of the ATMs. We're Los Angeles. There'll be plenty of money when we let the systems work, when we let businesses work. How can you let business work if you have drug addicts going number 1 and number 2 in front of every cafe? We lost over 100 restaurants in LA, not because they weren't good food, but because you have drug addicts scaring people to go out. Let's examine that real quick. By the way, I don't really have much of a problem with this, but I just want to analyze this real quick. A bunch of what he said in there, long on promises, long on appeals to shared frustrations, long on big ideas, long on painting a picture of the future. LA should be the number 1 city. ATMs shooting out money. So long on all of these big things. Long on personal conviction. Long on sounding like a normal person. Short on details. Who does that remind you of? We're never going to see a political force like Donald Trump. And I hesitate to call him a talent, although there is definitely talent there. But this has been a guy who just does not care for so long. He just says what he thinks he believes. He might believe something else in 24 hours, but he says it with a great deal of conviction when he says it. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes it makes you scratch your head. Sometimes it makes you want to put your head through the wall. But Spencer Pratt, kind of channeling those same things. A lot of times, especially early on in Trump's political career, at least at the national level this go around, it goes back over 10 years now. Long on promises, long on shared frustrations, long on painting a rosy picture of the future, short on details. Now, I'm not saying that Spencer Pratt is trying to pull a fast one on anybody. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to assess him as a candidate. And I'll just tell you, from what I've seen from this guy, if political instincts and messaging instincts were like Star Wars midichlorians, or chlorians, however you pronounce them, this guy's midichlorian count is off the charts. Again, from what I've seen from him. The Mother's Day ad that he put out, I mean, the instincts are there. We'll see if the policy is there as well, especially if he, by some stroke of luck, by some providence of God, actually gets elected as mayor. We'll see if the policy comes next. But the guy's political instincts are off the charts. In Los Angeles, of all places. That's going to do it for Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.